First of all, before we get started, this is a really big team effort. In fact, we have 15 people involved in trying to get this ready. And what we realized early on when we joined the Board of Assessors is that perhaps communications wasn't our best, strongest suit. And there were a number of people who were not able to participate actively. We found out that roughly 5% of the town doesn't have internet access, so they couldn't understand what's going on. And a good chunk of the population in the older segments weren't really able to get to the computer and make their computers working. So therefore, we realized we're missing out on one of the most important groups of the town. And almost a third of the population of Lunenburg is seniors, 60 and over. And I think, Sue, you have, how many, 3,000? Yeah, out of a population of 12, so maybe it's 25, 27%. And we were not able to reach them. So we decided we're going to put on an informational session and share with you all the things that are going on in town and how we can help you directly. And first, I'd like to start off just by saying, mentioning those people that have helped with this. First of all, let's give a hand for Sue Doherty, honestly. Sue, you're awesome, you really are, and you've made this place just so neat. You know, if I were 14, I'd think this was the boys' club. And now I'm discovering it's the old boys' club, so this is too much. But Sue, thank you very much. And Sue was inspirational as well, she helped me work on some of these pieces, and I would go and pull it together and say, Sue, what do you think? And she always had a good, thoughtful comment, and it's because she was the closest to you folks. She knows how things work. And so anyway, Sue, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Michelle and Pauline from the office. Greg's a very lucky man, and I want to say that one. Dan, our cameraman. There you go. Dan, I'm going to try it cemetery.
Oh, yeah, pretty good. You got it.
Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you for Rena Sweezy, our auditor, lead auditor, fill-in guru who knew everything. And honestly, when we had a new board, and we were really green. And thank goodness you were there to point us in the directions. Go look here, go look there. I want to say thank you to Lou Franco. Lou, you've been an advocate for us. You've been helping us, guide us. Really good stuff. Tom Alonso, Tom, thank you. Thank you very much. And you two have been helpful, very helpful. And then we have an honored guest, Representative Margaret Scarsdale, coming in, and she's going to be giving us some really neat information on what's happening in town. I want to say thank you to Kara McCarthy, who's been working with us on the new website, and we're able to use a lot of this information and make it usable. We want to thank Town Manager Heather Lemieux for guiding us along. Heidi Spinney from the Zoom, on the Zooming side of the thing. Of course, we want to say thank you to our Chairman Brian LaFarne and Sarah Kammer. This is a neat team experience, and that each one of us have a lead on something, but we all jump in to help the other. So this team is screaming along, and we want to say thank you, Paul Serapis. Where are you, Paul? There you go, and from the Ledger. So we're going to be able to, between the Ledger and the PAC TV and essentially Zooming, we think we can reach a big piece of the population with the information that we've got. So, and we may have another one depending on, this is a good turnout. And again, thank you very much. And we'll get started. I'm not going to bother to read the agenda because we're already late and we don't want to keep you much past 4. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to introduce you to Rena. And I need to tell you, this is not like a static thing where you make the laws and you go away. We are getting a new feed every other week on some sort of update to the laws and with regard to what your exemptions are and pieces of it. And that just staying on top of that is going to be a real challenge. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to pass you off to Rena.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I would like to introduce your new principal assessor for the town of Lunenburg. This is Linda McQuaid. Today's her first day, so. And because Linda has also been an assessor in another couple of other communities, she's as familiar probably as I am with all these senior exemptions, veterans exemptions, blind. So I thought between the two of us, we could kind of give you a little overview of what the property tax exemptions are. And we only have, right now currently, there's only a few of them we use in this town. The 41C is for seniors 70 or over. And there is one, a 17D. It's for surviving spouses or children of a firefighter or a police officer that has passed away. Currently we don't have any persons in our 17D in our veterans. And I'm actually going to start with the veterans because that's probably the easiest one. The veterans we have several different clauses. We have a 22 small a through F. Anybody that has a service-connected disability with a letter from the VA giving their percentage, which is from 10 to 100%, would qualify, but they have to have that service-connected disability and the letter from the VA. But for the veterans, it's $400 off on their taxes. And then it goes to a 22D, which is a full exemption. We only have a few of those because it's somebody that is either paraplegic or has been terribly injured during the war. And then we have anybody that has 100% disability, and that's a 22E, and that's $1,000 off on their taxes. But again, anybody that has a service-connected disability and a letter from the VA administration is welcome if they think they qualify to come into the office. We have forms for all that, and then they can fill out the forms, and we can give them some help. So the majority of the exemptions in Massachusetts really concentrate on what's called a 41C exemption. That's for people that are 70 or over. And in our town, the exemption is $750 off your taxes. And again, these are all state programs, so there are some qualifications. And I'm just going to read some of these qualifications so you'll know. You must be 70 by July 1st. So for this year, it would be, you have to be 70 by July 1st of 24. You must own your domicile. You must have lived in Massachusetts for 10 years and own the property for at least 5 to qualify. Here comes the crunch. In Massachusetts, the income requirements are for a single person, your income cannot exceed $31,500. In Massachusetts, kind of like a poverty level thing. For a married couple, your income cannot exceed $39,600 a year. These are set by the state of Massachusetts. And the income is from all sources. Any wages, your Social Security, any pensions you have, any interest, dividends, annuities, IRAs, and if you have rental property, all that qualifies as income cannot be above those limits. In your assets, you have assets for a single person that cannot exceed $52,700 a year. For a married couple, your assets cannot exceed $72,700 a year. And again, that includes your checking accounts, your savings accounts, your bank accounts, your bonds, your 401ks, IRAs, and I don't know why the state puts this in, recreational vehicles, second homes. So if you have any of those, you don't qualify. And those are kind of the basic, the income probably is the most important one. The age, 70, maybe a lot of people are 70, but hitting that income requirement is probably the hardest thing to get anybody into these programs, because most people exceed that $31,000. But if anybody thinks they do qualify, please come by the office. Anything you fill out on these forms is confidential, not open to the public, can only be reviewed by the office staff and the Board of Assessors when they sign these. This is not public record, unlike a lot of things in our office. That's all public record. This is all strictly confidential. So these are basically the exemptions. We also have one for legally blind. That one, again, it's a exemption amount. You would receive $437.50 off your taxes. In Lunenburg, we give $500. And that one, the only qualification on that one is you have to have a letter from the Commission on the Blind saying you're blind. But those are basically the exemptions that we have in our community. I don't know if you have anything, Linda, you want to add to that?
Yeah, could be the 17D. I wanted to mention that. The surviving spouse of persons over 70 who do not qualify for the 41C. That one, you must own or occupy the property. You have to be over 70 and must have lived also in Massachusetts for 10 years and own the property for 5 years, similar to the 41C. That one, the assets cannot be more than $66,000, and by assets we mean, checking, savings, stocks, bonds, IRAs, recreational vehicles, second homes, etc. I wanted to just mention that. And then, as Rena mentioned, the 22, the service-connected disabled veterans. We actually have a sheet here if anybody has any questions on this that we can pass out. And then we have some other information and some applications as well. So if you want, I can pass out. This is just a sheet just summarizing what we have here. I can do that for anyone that might be interested. Or if you have any questions as well, we're here.
Just a quick, for clarity, when you talk about income limits with income levels, you talk about adjusted gross income on the, 1099
Yes.
tax forms? Okay.
Yes. And actually, that's one of the requirements. If you qualify for these financially, we have to actually see bank statements, your 1040s. You actually have to prove that you're eligible for these. So, and we do have a list of things we send out, that has all the documentation. Your Social Security, or if you have IRAs, anything like that. So, anybody else have a question?
We do send out the applications every year as well. Once you do apply for it, you would get an application. You do have to apply for it every year as well.
And once you are in the program, we automatically every year, we know who our seniors are. We don't expect you to come in. We'll send the application to you. Unless your assets change drastically, most people, their income doesn't really change during the year, but, we will look at all that. But, yeah, once you're in, you're there, so.
Now, that was the hard part in terms of hearing these low numbers. The rest of it's going to be more positive in terms of causing change. And the one that we're really working hard on right now is the 41C that Rena had brought up. We're asking the voters at this town meeting to change it. We're going to change it from 70 down to 65. Also, we're going to change it from the maximum amount of money you could receive back is $750. We're asking for a change to $1,000. but we'll get you all that detail. And there's a lot of other positive things like that Margaret's working, Lou and Tom are, in terms of making changes. And there are other things that we haven't been using in town, but they're available to us, and it'll help you stay in your house. Okay, so the next one is essentially, Rena's done that. And again, remember, there's a continual state of change. Come on, get over there. Our next speaker is Representative Margaret. And Scarsdale, excuse me, I should use your last name, shouldn't I? Yeah. Okay, Margaret, if you want to get up, and she's going to share with you what's happening on Beacon Hill.
Make sure I don't trip on the cord. And I work a lot with Pepperell Community Media, and they always said, hold it like an ice cream cone, the microphone. So here we go. I am State Representative Margaret Scarsdale. It is such an honor to be here today on a very sunny and not windy Monday, and I hope you all are enjoying the start to spring. As Jack mentioned, there are quite a few updates that I wanted to go over with you. And just a note about the agenda, the things in the pipeline, the state auditor and the multiple legislators and the Massachusetts Teachers Association and tweaking the school funding formula, that is all one general topic. You're probably aware of the issues with the school funding formula on the State House side and how it affects the towns. I have 6 towns in the 1st Middlesex District, and all of them are facing or talking about some kind of override. And when you have a general fund budget where about 60% of that is taken up by the schools, if there's any fluctuation in that huge piece of the pie, then it really affects the overall budget. So we're very cognizant of that. I serve Lunenburg with Senator Cronin and Representative Mike Kushmarek. And there have been ongoing conversations at the State House level about how can we work on fixing this problem. And that has involved conversations with DESE, which is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, conversations with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, the Massachusetts Municipal Association, Massachusetts Teachers Association. I have met with all 6 FinComs and school committees and select boards. I've talked with leadership, and we have a regional school caucus that met today to talk about our priorities for this year's budget. One of those priorities is to formally request that the minimum student aid that each town gets is raised from $60 to $100. So that's a pretty large increase in that one area. Other things that we are looking at, some of the schools are in a category called hold harmless by the state's Student Opportunity Act funding formula. It has a lot of different metrics and a lot of different pieces to that formula, but basically, if a school receives reduced funding in one year due to decreased student enrollment or any number of factors, that lowers the maximum level that you're going to get in subsequent years. And in talking with DESE, they mentioned that hold harmless is really creating a kind of cliff for some of the school districts, that it's really hard to dig out if you're not meeting the previous year's funding. You already have a hole, and then you have increases like collective bargaining, health insurance goes up. So you have increased costs for schools, but you're not getting the funding. So definitely working on that. I brought out our state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, and her team to talk about the mandates that schools have in order to provide quality education for the students, around transportation, around special education and transportation for special ed and the impact that it has on towns when those mandates aren't met. They are looking at that. For the time being, for this budget cycle, and just as a little timeline, you all are going to pass your town budget in May. The House and the Senate and the state are not going to pass their budget until the end of June. So the best that's going to happen this year is just increased funding that would be more of a one-time type funding, possibly getting it again next year. But the real issue is to try to tweak that student opportunity formula so that it works for all of our cities and towns. I have to say that measure, which took about 10 years to pass, was a sweeping overhaul of our education funding in the state. And it has worked really well for some cities and towns, very rural cities and towns, and gateway cities and towns. But the places that it has left out are smaller towns, still rural, but smaller towns that don't fit into rural and aren't a gateway city, towns like Lunenburg. So it has our attention. We are working very hard on that, and I hope at least for this budget that we do have that increased funding of the minimum student aid to help out with the budgets. The next thing, Unitel. I'm sure you're all familiar with Unitel. Always increased rates, not always increasing great service to the communities. With Senator Cronin and Representative Kushmarek, we brought out our Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, and her entire team to hear from the community about the impact, because Unitel, as you probably know, has proposed another tax increase. Just this morning, I saw an email from the Attorney General and her staff to the Department of Public Utilities, which approves or disapproves rate increase proposals, negating all of Unitel's reasons for needing this proposal, and basically an unqualified statement to the DPU, the Department of Public Utilities, to not grant this rate increase. And furthermore, that Unitel needs to conduct and take on system-wide improvements to the way that they deliver services to this community. I think that is pretty much unheard of for an attorney general to just, in an unqualified way, say, this is not acceptable. And I am sure DPU hears that loud and clear. That process will have to play out. Unitel will have a chance to rebut that, but it is great to have the Attorney General on our side, so that is good news. Let me see, I have a whole bunch of notes here. I want to make sure I don't forget anything. The municipal choice bill related to Unitel, that is a bill filed by Rep. Kushmarek on the House side, Senator Cronin on the Senate side, and co-sponsored by me on both sides, to allow municipalities to become their own municipal light provider. Other towns in the state have done it. Littleton and Concord are just two examples. By all reports and all surveys and all accounts, people who are served by those municipal light plants are very happy with the service. They get great responses. Their rates are lower than the average from Unitel and National Grid. And it kind of makes sense, right? You're seeing your neighbors in the grocery store, and they don't want to hear that you haven't gotten out of the ice storm in 3 weeks. So that bill was extended at the State House. Bills had a deadline in mid-March by which they had to be reported out of committee, or they were sent to study, which is State House speak for that bill is dead and you have to start all over again in the next legislative cycle. That bill has an extension, which means the chairs are still working on trying to get to a yes so that the bill can keep proceeding, and I can keep the select board and Mr. Rabbit updated about that. H74, an act to modernize cable access providers and keep Lunenburg public access in the town. This bill affects all of the cable access providers in the state, and you are able to be here today. People watching at home are able to watch because of the services of places like Lunenburg Access, Pepperell Community Media, the Groton Channel. They help make meetings and important town decisions available to everyone so that they can be informed and they can stay up to date on what's going on. You can watch entertainment shows on the cable access. I worked with the filer of this bill, Joan Moschino. She is a representative to reach out to every one of the cable access providers in the state. This bill was also given an extension until April 15th. We do have a deadline on that one. The Senate chair is not sure that it's not going to impose a hardship on subscribers. Rep. Moschino had a study done by the Department of Revenue. This bill will add about 8 cents a month, 8 pennies a month onto your cable bill, and it means that local access providers can stay in business, because the problem is cable subscriptions keep dropping. Netflix and other streaming services keep gaining in popularity, but that funding from the cable is not transferring over to the streaming services, and this bill makes that pathway happen. Let's see, and I think that was all on that one. We did encourage all of the cable community access media people not only to write to the Senate chair and the House chair about the importance of this bill and the impact it will have if it does not move through. We asked them to, because they're cable professionals, we asked them to create little 3-minute videos having residents talk about what access to this kind of service means to them and the impact it will have if it doesn't pass. Those are coming in. We reached out to select boards to ask them to also send a letter. So it's not too late for you to reach out to the chairs. I should have thought of this in advance, Jack, because I could give information. I could put it on the back table about how to write to the chair. Doesn't have to be War and Peace. It doesn't have to be eloquent. Just a few sentences saying, this is important to me because, and just say why because, and help us keep a service, a valued service like this in our communities. And I believe that is it. I don't know if you want to take questions now or at the end.
Okay, thank you very much, Margaret. It was enlightening for sure, and I hope we all do. We'll send a message out to everybody if we could, in terms of right, and say we want our cable, we want to keep it going. That would be a nice thing.
Is it better if I send it just directly to you?
I would send it to Tom and Lou.
All right.
Yeah, you're the focal point. You guys are the focal point of our town, so.
All right.
Yeah.
I will do that.
So the next piece was essentially something that Lou and Tom had put together, and essentially we got it voted in last year, and now it's winding its way, and now Lou and Tom, I'm handing this off to you.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, so just for a little bit of history, I came from the select board, I came from the Board of Assessors before the debacle, before I came to the select board. So I was familiar with a lot of the exemptions that existed that were previously discussed. And I found them to be inadequate for the reasons discussed previously. So when I came onto the select board, I wanted to do something about additional senior tax relief. That was a major issue that I wanted to advance, and I know that was very important to Mr. Alonso as well, and he and I worked together to get us to where we are now, which is what we're going to get into. We, in the fall of 2022, Tom and I worked together to put together a warrant article which eventually found its way onto the May 2023 into the warrant as Article 21, and that's why you'll see references to Article 21 here. And it's a measure that we are permitted under our charter to do a home rule petition for this, and we did this under our home rule petition. We put forth to the town in May of 2023 an article for means-tested senior tax relief. And this, I'm not sure why this was here for the town meeting purposes. It's not going to make a lot of sense till we get farther into the slides. But there was just an amendment here to, we had the word residential here, but it's really all taxpayers, including commercial, that are supporting where this money is coming from for the senior tax relief. So you should think of this in terms of qualifications, applicant qualifications. So that's one aspect that needs to be discussed. The other aspect that needs to be discussed is limitations, both individual limitations on this relief and also limitations in the aggregate. I'm going to talk about qualifications. Mr. Alonso is going to talk about limitations. So we crafted this very carefully, Tom and I, with taking into account many factors, and among them being we wanted to ensure that we were getting relief to people that really needed it the most, but trying to limit how many, for lack of a better term, how many abusers of the system there might be that might get through the net and deplete the available funds for the relief. The other thing we wanted to do is ensure that it was relief that was provided to people that had really invested in the town. In other words, that they didn't move here 2 or 3 years ago, and now they're eligible for this relief. So that is the rationale behind these qualifications that we ultimately put forth before the town, and that the town passed in May of 2023. So in order to qualify, and we also want to make sure that all other possible remedies have been exhausted and explored first by an applicant before they come for this relief. This relief is in addition to all those other exemptions and in addition to this circuit breaker. It is not instead of any of those. So you must have applied for, an applicant must have applied for and been granted the state's senior circuit tax breaker credit. So that's pre-qualification. I'm going to switch 2 and 3 because they make a little bit more sense in the reverse order. Each applicant in the application must be 65 years or older. And then the second one is each applicant at or over 70 years old must have applied for and been granted the elderly elderly exemption in Lunenburg. So that was some of the previous ones that were discussed. The reason is this: those provisions have a bar of 70 years, as they currently exist. If the article that's going to come before a town meeting passes, those will be reduced to 65. But right now they're 70. But we wanted our eligibility to be 65. Tom and I did. But we did have a provision so you can still apply if you say you're like 67 for this senior tax relief, and you would not be required to have qualified for the ones in Lunenburg that require you to be age 70. However, if you are 70 or older, in order to qualify for the senior tax relief that we put forward, you had to have qualified and been granted the exemptions, the other exemptions, any of the other exemptions for which you would have qualified. I hope that was clear. So there's an extra requirement for the senior tax relief if you are 70 or older. If you are under 70 but older than 65, you are relieved of one of the requirements. The applicant must have owned and occupied a home in the town of Lunenburg as his or her primary residence for at least 15 consecutive years, including the date of application. So this is what I was getting at. We didn't want people to just move here and become, for lack of a better term, a retirement haven, move into the town and get tax relief. We wanted people who had invested in the town for a substantial period of time. We thought 10 years was too short, 20 years was too long, and a lot of formulas were played with the prior principal assessor, the numbers got too big when we put 10 years, eligibility at 10 years, and they got a little bit too small and a little bit too burdensome at 20 years. So we arrived at 15. Next, if you could please, Jack. Okay, so you must also demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Lunenburg Board of Assessors that each applicant or co-applicant owns no other significant assets, such as by way of non-limiting example, a second home, a trust fund, securities, equities, and bonds. So there's a little bit of a discretionary aspect here on the part of the Board of Assessors, just to make sure that, I mean, as there are with these other exemptions as well, just ensuring that there's a genuine need, that there's a lack of assets, a lack of income to their satisfaction. So it's a bit discretionary, this final one. And also, finally, you must apply annually. If you qualify for it once, it's not going to renew automatically. You need to do it again next year. So with that, I will turn over to Mr. Alonso. And I do want to, just before I get off, just want to also, this was the back end of it, I really thank Tom. Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Approximately how many people right now receive this?
Actually, nobody receives this yet, because from it passing at town meeting, this had to go to this, I should have been more specific about this. This went up to the state legislature after that, because it needs to go through, under the home rule, it needs to go through the legislature and be approved and passed by them. It is winding its way through that process. Representative Scarsdale, do you have about where that is right now?
It's currently in a third reading in the Senate, so it's past the House side, it's in the Senate side. It hasn't until July 30th to be voted out, so still a good amount of time for it to get through. But it's moving along.
Yes, and it's actually moving along at about as fast a clip as we could have expected it to, because after it passed at town meeting, we thought the timeline would be 1 to 2 years. We're not even at 1 year yet. So it is moving pretty well. So nobody's gotten this yet, but hopefully it will pass and become law, and people can begin applying for it. So with that, I do also want to thank our state delegation for taking the baton and getting it moving on Beacon Hill. So thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about the qualifications?
Yes.
It's about me. So we lived in town for 22 years and then left and are now back. So we've been back for 6 years. I did live in town consecutively for 15 years, but not the most recent 15 years. Is there a provision for which I could plead my case?
He's hesitating, I'll give you the easy answer, no. And that's just because of the way the wording is.
Yeah.
So, we went through.
I think you guys agree.
No, that's, I'm glad nobody licked it. So, the first, I want to start by saying why we started this. So obviously, the assessing department and RENA talked about the existing provisions, and what we felt is that often when we talked about property taxes in town, there was always the evidence, I've lived here my whole life and I shouldn't be forced out. So we felt that the state exemptions were not adequate enough for those people who fit that, and we wanted to, and we looked for a long time for ways to prevent yet another layer of exemptions for long-term residents. So that was the impetus behind this. It wasn't until we discovered that we could do this through home rule charter, because we were looking at every avenue for many years, that we came up with this. So that's number one. Number two is we looked at to your question directly, we looked at many different ways. And I mean, when you write laws, and of course the representative knows this, no matter what you come up with, there's going to be somebody who has another situation that you could look at. We had to come and start with something, so we didn't talk about an interrupted interval. We just came up with this. So somebody who said, I raised my children here, I've been living here for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and that should count for something, and we agreed with that, but we didn't think about interrupted ones. And obviously, we could always go back and amend it, but right now, the answer to your question is unfortunately no. So the limitations, because this is kind of piggybacked on 41C and the circuit breaker tax credit, so the most additional relief you can get is whatever you get under the circuit breaker tax credit. So basically, effectively, this would double your exemption, or the money you'd be exempted from. You can't get more than that. The Board of Assessors will annually set the exemption amount, except it shall never exceed, again, that section of Mass General Law. So we're never going to give you more money than the state's going to give you. We'll match it, but we won't ever give you more than that. And because to get this passed through town, we need it to be revenue neutral, and all the exemptions that we're offering to people who qualify into this program, those tax revenues will be picked up by the rest of the taxpayers. We agreed that we would never exceed, the exemptions would never exceed 1% of the total levy, which in this case is around 300,000, I think our levy is around 30 million or something in that regard. So let's just say, 300,000, we would never defer and push onto other taxpayers more than 1% of the levy. And those are the only limitations that exist here. And once, and I will say once because I'm a positive person, once this passes the Senate, then we will work closely with the Assessor's Department and with our new Principal Assessor and all the Board of Assessors in implementing this and making sure this is available. And I don't know how quickly, we don't know how fast it was going to pass the legislature. So we don't know if this will be implemented for next year. I'm assuming if it's passed before July 31st, we may be able to get it implemented for next July, not this July. Any questions about any of this for Lou or myself? Yes?
My son is the homeowner. I just live in the house. I moved here about 3 years ago. From Arizona, and he lives right on Lake Shirley, and his property tax doubled in this past year. And I'm just thinking, there are people that are neighbors that are retired. They'll eventually, and I said to Nathan, well, what will happen to the property tax this year? And he said, well, it always goes up. And I said, well, eventually you're going to price yourself out of these people to be able to live here. Do you ever feel for any of that, or do you just say, well, that's the way it goes, sell your house?
So to the second one, I never say that. To the first one, of course. I mean, I am very sensitive, and I think everybody in an elected capacity in town and at the state level is always thinking about that. So there's a balance about, one could argue that maybe doing property taxes is not the way to fund things. Unfortunately, that is the way that things are funded. So we have to balance how to pay for all the services in town, whether it's schools or police or fire or DPW, and balance that against the taxpayers who, are indeed many of them under hardship and find it difficult. So yes, it's always a balance, and that's why Lou and I came up with this idea to do this, is to give it another level of relief for those people who really need it. And now there's always people, unfortunately, in a gray area, like they may not qualify for some of the state funds. As was said, there's certain income requirements, and some people will, even if you're just eke above them, you're in a bad spot, and we always feel looking for ways to do that. But yeah, we always feel for that, and it's always a tricky position.
Good, then cut taxes.
There is that underride, so you can certainly do that. Of course, then you won't be paying for things that need to be done. So,
Was it here to the police force? That's it.
if you can get it passed, there you go. That's democracy in action. Any other questions? Yes.
The woman over here wanted to know how many are currently on the program. Was that the 41C you were asking about? How many people we currently have?
That are receiving some kind of tax relief.
On the 41C, there's 18.
We're averaging right now approximately 20 recipients of the 41C at this particular point.
So in the whole town of, including
The
whole
whole town,
65,
that's-
it's only 20 people?
That's the problem. That is the problem. And that's why the next speaker, who's gonna give you all sorts of really good information in that regard and a little bit of hope in terms of not losing your house and things like that. And that's the other part of the package that we want to share.
I don't know if Pat got that, so I'm going to repeat that over the microphone if people didn't hear it. So the answer to the question is the recipients of the 41C is somewhere between 18 and 20 in town. And yes, as was noted, it's because the income levels that, in order for to qualify, are so low that it's, we wish they would be higher. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and the Board of Assessors has a warrant article for the town meeting, is to lower the age requirement from the current 70 to 65. So we'll try to get more people earlier instead of waiting to 70. Because 41C in this town is 70.
Yeah, I just want to make a split a hair here. I believe the way this was asked, I think, is how many people are currently getting the benefit of 41C, not how many people are actually eligible for it. There may only be 19 people getting it, not because only 19 people qualify, but only because only 19 people who qualify were aware of it and applied for it. So there are probably far more people that are actually eligible for it. So part of this has to be communication and making people aware of it. It's an awareness issue as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Tom. And, Lou, Tom. Excuse me. Okay, so here's hopefully the hopeful part for you. And essentially, we're gonna go into 41C. And very briefly, and I realize they've only got about 8 minutes left before we really want to try and button this up. By the way, I would like to point your attention to the boards over here. Those are as related to, this is our house wall, in which we looked all the houses we did a comparison last year, but also talked about growth rates and the valuations. And our town grew 16% in value last year. That drove a lot, and it's going to drive a lot of people out. And so this is what this is all about, trying to help you stay there. And at the same time, there's all sorts of other good information out there that if you get a chance before we leave, take a quick look. But anyway, I want to talk about the 41C, the circuit breaker, which is also tied into it. Circuit breaker seems to be becoming a big thing now in terms of people understanding it and getting some really real benefits. How to verify your eligibility with regard to these other pieces. There's a neat thing put out by AARP. It just came out. Real easy to use, and will show you how you pre-qualify if you want. And at the same time, I want to talk about tax deferrals. You know what? If you get in trouble and you get behind, come and talk to us. We probably can work with some sort of deferral program that's going to help you. And it's just kind of like taking a little bit of a loan, but you don't have to pay it till you're dead. So that's the good news. Death and taxes, well, in this case, they do go together. But in either case, it'll allow you to continue to try and stay in your home and help you defer those costs. It's not well known, it's not been used. I don't think we've ever had a deferral in town. Have we ever used a deferral? Linda, you ever used a deferral? No. Again, it's not well known. So anyway, 41C, just a real quick background on that. Being a new assessor, we had a chance to sign sign 20 of them. And I was shocked, I really was. I have no idea how these people were able to live and own a home. And it caused us to start as a team looking at what can we do to help. So what we did is we went out and actually looked at the 41 group, and we did a town-wide analysis of local towns and what they were doing to help. We looked at exemption practices, actual senior exemption levels, and as you've heard, you know, it runs between 18 to 21, 22. We picked a number of averages and current level of participation, right? We looked at the Federal Census Act with regard to profiles, people, and life expectancies. And thank you very much, Sue. You did a good job. You're pointing me in the right direction. Okay, as well as the American Community Service for poverty. We have a poverty issue in town here, and I'll show you some quick data on it. Not everybody's wealthy. In fact, there's a big piece of our senior population that is living in poverty, below the poverty income levels, and we'll show that real quick. We also turned around, you know, comes back. We looked at how long do people spend in their homes. Once you get to be about 65, you notice things are, that's our question, Jane Knight's question. How long are we gonna be able to stay here? How long can we afford to stay here, not just keep the house up? So what kind of planning can we do on that? We looked at median household income, senior poverty levels, all in Lunenburg, and we looked closely with the Adult Learning Center. Where you go, Sue. Again, thank you so much. Okay, the results of the current state, we were able to project what the senior participation levels would be based on what we thought where this 41C was going to end up, whether it's 65 or 70. Remember, that comes out of your pocket a little bit. We looked at the average final cost impacts for the household, total cost of the town, and impacts on people's senior life. When we had that major brouhaha, when we hit the iceberg last year, you know, a big chunk of our lakes are retired people like us, you know, and they've been in the family for years, and all of a sudden we get hit with a horrendous tax, like your son, hit with a big, and we had like a month to pay it all, you know, that was horrendous. So, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. Is we're supposed to be looking as a Board of Assessors and what is the impact on our population and how we can help ameliorate the pain that's going to go along with it. So anyway, then we concluded there were really 4 significant options, and I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but basically, it said that, okay, can we do nothing, stay like this, and get ground up? Secondly, can we come back and change the amount of reimbursement from 750, up to 1,000. The other one was to lower the age from 70 to 65, or combine them. But meantime, I just want to let you realize our town population as of 2022 was 1,885. So it's easy to say we got 12,000 employees here. Median income is 111,000 per household. That's pretty good money. But it's a curve, right? And you're going to have a part of the population that's not going to be doing so well. Okay, federal census on residents over the age of 65 was a little more than 2,000. And in fact, if you looked at, there was another American survey, and it said that basically people over 60 represented in the poverty section, 12%. Or if you take just that 65 group, or the different groups, in all that way, it's up on the wall and it's in your packages. But basically, if we had 984 people living in poverty in this town, we have basically 290 of them as school-age kids, right? That's why I'm glad we're feeding them lunch now. At least we get the lunch. We get the food, the protein going into them. Adults, basically 428, and 263 seniors are living in poverty, below poverty income. And that's representing 26% of that entire impoverished group. So anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, we anticipated we looked at our life expectancies. You know, how soon are we going to die based on 65, and it's men and it's women. But you know, the thing is, you hit 65, men are going to last about 17 years, women are going to last about 19. At the age of 65 to 70, approximately 43% of those people move because of life changes, whether it's the taxes or whatever, but you're going to end up moving. The NAR reported that the expected tenure of your time in the home, once you hit 67, is about 15 years. And that became the basis for our planning on the numbers in terms of how long are we going to town is going to be giving those discounts, exemptions out. So we were able to come up with some numbers. And by the way, interesting. The feds say if you're married and you're 40, you're bringing 45,000 or less, you're in that poverty zone. If you're married up to 65, Massachusetts has a different number. Massachusetts decides you're in poverty, and they're not going to help you till you hit 20,000, or if you're below 20,000, then maybe they'll help you. And if you're married, maybe 30,000. I don't know how people do it. They can't. So that's the reason why we're pushing on this 41C and a couple of other measures to help you. Okay, we looked at the surrounding towns, and essentially our age is 70. The median age in the local towns is 65. 2/3 of our local towns are letting people participate at 65, not 70. The other part of it is that local town residents, in terms of how much they're receiving, 20% of them are receiving $500. 30% of them are receiving $750. 50% of them are receiving $1,000 or more. And this is old stuff. Remember, this hasn't been changed since 1986. How do you do it? How do you do it? And that's why we've got to be doing something. Okay. So we ended up doing all the calculations, and essentially, if we chose our first option to do nothing, the town's still shelling out $1.12. That's it for the year to support what we're doing right now. If we decide to essentially raise the compensation, it would go up to $2.26 for the whole year now. That's per resident. If we were to come along and just lower the age, it'd go to $1.69 down. If we did both of them at $3.38, if we just once, if we can pass this, and it's going to go to town meeting, and folks, our board has recommended yes to do both to help them. And it is going to cost us $3.38 on the whole, net to above what we're doing. It's going to be $2.26. I'm running like heck. Okay, I'm sorry. So anyway, that stuff's up there. But anyway, essentially, it's worth a cup of coffee. That's it. Tom's not here. He just left. Yeah, he used the analogy. I didn't know he used it, but anyway, it's a cup of coffee. That's all we're asking you to do to help our seniors, our impoverished seniors. That's it. A 1 cup of coffee for the whole year. So anyway, okay. See if the town will vote to amend it. That's what's going to show up on the warrant. We're going to 70 to 65, and from to $1,000 down from the $750 we've got. Okay. Next part, circuit breaker. You're going to hear a lot about that, and if you're at the backboard, it's tied into the stuff that Lou is doing. It's tied into something that we don't offer and we should be offering. Just think, and the limits are much more livable at this point. Rena, thank you so much. She has to run. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, right now, if you were to look at that circuit breaker, married couples filing jointly, you can make up to $103,000 a year. That's a good number. I like that number. I wish I were, right? But for that matter, and your house has been knocking you out because you think it's worth too much. $1,025,000. I think most of us in Lunenburg are eligible once you become retired and you're living on, getting your Social Security and whatever your retirement. You're probably easy in with it. And oh, by the way, one of the nice things about this is you get a check when you file, and you can go 3 years back and try and reclaim it. You get a check. It's not something, you can apply it or something. You get real money back. So anyway, in your brochure, you'll see the linkages to it. And there's even a video in which the politicians talk about. Linda, thank you so much. Okay. So, Linda, can I tell all these people about you and your background and stuff? Or okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So anyway, there's even a video. Go watch it. These guys are talking about people that are bringing home some reasonable money that need the help. Now, there's another thing. AARP, my favorite magazine. Most people get it. Stop laughing. I know, they're all laughing. It is one of my favorite magazines. It's telling you so much about what's relevant to us. So they have put up a device that essentially says, go to aarpfoundation.org, property tax aid. And I did it, and I go, oh my God, this is really easy. You click on it, you go in, they ask you what state it is, they ask you a few things, and then they come back and they tell you, will you qualify or won't you qualify, right? That's worth its weight in gold from a lot of different reasons. I don't have to go, a lot of people don't want to do it because number one, they don't want to do it. I mean, they don't know about it, but secondly, it's stressful. You know, it's like, oh my God, I hate my taxes. I got to do them when I get home. Oh my God, I don't want to deal with this. And you just let it go, let it slide. This thing is so darn easy, and it gives you an idea of whether or not you're qualified. And by the way, if you think you're qualified, you have a reason to fill out your application. If you're not qualified, you won't, and you're going to save us assessors a pile of time versus having to go through it. So this is like a absolute no-brainer. Go to the AARP site and get an idea of whether or not you're going to qualify and whether you can make some money. Okay, to help your son or whatever, there's a clause called 41A, and it's a deferral. If you're hurting, short, maybe you've lost your job, fill out the 41A, come on in, talk to us, and see what we can do. What you'll end up doing is you're going to put your house up as collateral, you know, and it's kind of like a reverse mortgage. But this is pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. There are some. It's qualified seniors, disabled vets, blind persons, surviving spouses. You can do it as well. It just doesn't have to be that one. You may qualify to enter. Okay. You're going to have to fill out an agreement that you eventually will pay the town. Okay, here we go. It's not a machine. Don't you think the town should buy him a new one? Anyway, income limits. Okay, and the nice thing about it is they've changed that. Ignore this, and that's really exciting. It used to be $20,000. No, it's quite a bit larger. In fact, the latest TIR just showed the increase. I'll get you to that one in a second. But anyway, increased receipt limits may be increased to income limit allowed from the circuit breaker. If you qualify for the circuit breaker, you go to AARP and say, I want to qualify for the circuit breaker. It'll come back and tell you. If it does, that becomes your new limits. Circuit breaker limits are far greater than the 20,000 that's sitting here. Okay, the deferral amount, you may defer payment, all a part of the taxes. You don't have to defer the whole thing. You can say, I can't come up with that extra 1,000. You know what? Okay, we're going to defer the 1,000. And guess what? You're going to get hit for a whole 8% interest. It might even be lower if the town decides to vote it lower. Your surviving spouse can continue on, and the payment of deferred taxes and accrued interest rate is due when the property is sold or you pass away. Unless you're surviving spouse, and that continues. But as of this date, if you decide that that gets caught up and the family wants to hold on to it, now the family has to address it, and it's a 16% interest. But this is a good deal, because you know what? I'm on the ground. Do you really care? I want to be able to sleep in my bed. Hell with it, you know. Okay. So anyway, that's that part of it. There's hope. There really is hope. Just to show you what we've been doing as our team, this is the current website. It's about that much. There's not a lot of information. It's hard to figure out. It's tough to navigate, and not all of it is there. Well, what we've done, excuse me. Okay, so anyway, give you an idea of the scope of the change. Information is our problem, getting it out to the seniors, letting you know about things like deferrals and things like that. Well, okay, give you an idea. They had one small group, 10 elements, one secondary little site that you can give information. Nothing, not really helpful. The other side of it, we decided that we needed to do two things. We needed to be able to get a lot more information out to it. The other part of it is our actual board of assessors. Let me tell you, it was a horror show. The other members had quit. The town was up and at a while. We had more than 400 abatements trying to go. You know, thank goodness we had Rena. Otherwise, we were really lost. So anyway, we're trying to answer questions from the public. So we've gone out and created 15 groups, one group, with 15 different topics. We went back and said, you know, we have to have some sort of training. Wouldn't it be nice if you had your assessors trained? You know, kind of a nice gesture, you know, in terms of how should we do this? That's what it came down on. We're struggling. So the good news is the state requires in order if you become an assessor, right, LaRue? We had to go past 10 exams. We had to take 10 classes. And that took a little bit, but we were able to come in there. But we realized that our town doesn't really strong on process and process documentation and where to go to look. Is that a fair statement, Lou? It's fair. So we decided, let's build a whole process and training section for new assessors. What they can be, what they should be doing, how things flow, who goes to what, work breakdown structures, flows. We're building that right now. So either way, if we had one small group with 10 core elements, we now have 2 groups, 24 core elements, 37 second elements, and God only knows what's out there. It's gotten big. It's kind of like the state legislature. One of the things I worry about is the continual stream of information. How are we going to do that? All that is going to be going into the website. Pay attention every so often to go to visit the site, find out the latest changes. It'll make a big difference in your life. And the one thing we want to keep emphasizing in what we've just discovered is this thing called the property cards, right? And most people don't even know what they are and how to find it, right? You're going to be able to get to it. You can actually get to it right now. But we're urging people, check your property cards, because there is a lot. I'll give you an idea. We just did that reval. We ended up changing more than 200 property cards. Since then, we've been trickling through. 2 or 3 years ago, Rena left. I looked at my finally found it and said, what the heck? I got a house, I got a duplex living behind me, or a colonial living behind me in my barn. They call that a house. And then I have a little strip of land in the front on the other side. Oh, they call that a buildable lot. It happens to be on the lake and you got about 10 feet. That was a buildable lot. So that's when I first met Rena when she came out. And it's a coding error. Well, let me tell you, there's a ton of coding errors still in there. And all we can, we're working our way through it, but the best way to do it is ask everybody, go take a look at your property card. Go through and read it. To help that, oh, sure, go ahead.
What's a property card? I don't know what.
Okay, the property card is essentially, if you go into the GIS, go into the assessor's site, and it's going to say GIS. Tap that GIS, it's going to take you down out to the Lunenburg map. Zoom in on your house, tap it again, and it'll get you. The new website, by the way, will take you there automatically. But click that down, and it's going to give you a whole pile of information as related to property, the card, how they value your house, bedrooms, square footage, when you made changes. We will start including the abatements. We lost in one of the transitions, we lost a pile of abatements. So pay attention to that stuff. And sure, go ahead.
Who do you go to when you think there's an error on your property card?
Call the assessor. Call Rena, write us a note where we have a capture system, we have a corrective action response system that's coming along, but it's not there yet, because it's only 3 people in there, and that's a Herculean task. But, so essentially, go there, go to the site. We also have we built a brochure, how to read your property card, because there's a lot of codes and things like that in there. So go take a look at that, and you should be able to at least tell us what you're thinking, or if something's wrong. I have another good friend. He comes to me and he says, Jack, I had these assessors out as part of the 5-year, and they came to my property and said, what's that building? Where's that building there? And he goes, oh, it's not mine. And the assessor that came in, he says, oh, yes, it is, according to this. He'd been paying for somebody else's outbuilding, his barn, forever, because he didn't have a chance to go look at the property cards. So go potentially save yourself some money. Call them up, say, I got to have a change. This is wrong. And, oh, you got me at 5,500 square feet for my house. I live in a 20 by 30 cottage. That's not my house. Those things have happened. We've gone through 3 different CAM systems, and essentially we still have challenges in terms of cleaning up. We've done all the abatement requests. We have a few more. We don't know how many more we're going to get in terms of, we're going to send the tax bills out in another week or so. Go take a look. That's all we can say. Take a look, make sure it's okay. So anyway, in terms of the website itself, essentially there's the first group, and we're going to be able to tell you, we've got, believe it or not, we actually now have a vision and a charter. We actually always have the charter. We have a vision and mission, a code of ethics. We've now said this is what we're going to subscribe to. We have a strategic roadmap in terms of how we're fixing the Board of Assessors and the things that we're going to be doing. Oh, there you go. And we're going to even have some organization charts and work breakdown structures. But again, check your property cards. If there's any message that I can leave with you today, go check your property cards. And of course, you want to look at going through your AARP. And then the same thing, we've got training modules. If you want to decide in your next career you want to become an assessor, go into the modules. Go take a look at them. You know, before you couldn't get to them because the state kind of protected and wouldn't let you into their system. Well, we went out and did a screen capture on the entire training, all the modules. There's about a little more than 500 slides in there and trained, but you too could become an assessor. And your wife will really wonder what the heck happened. So anyway, check your property cards. Check your property cards. Okay, and then lastly, and Linda packed up and left, but we did want to say thank you and welcome Linda to this. They're all good people there. They're all doing the best they can. There's only 2 of them. We probably need 4 of them according to the recommendations from FSS. What was that? Oh, I thought somebody said something. Okay, sorry, Linda, Town of Air. She's a certified real estate appraiser. She did that for a lot of years, FHA approved. Town assessor for Boxborough, and she's a licensed realtor. If anybody can give you a good value on your house and understand what will do it, that'll be it. That'll be hers. We also have on this website, how do we evaluate? Go take a look at, see how we evaluate your house and the mechanisms we use. Yeah, we break it down between, you know, the building and the property. We have land curves now that are out there. We also have how you evaluate that piece of property. And basically, all we do is we look at the house, we look at the square footage, the type of house. We have an average cost to build it. We take the average cost to build it, and then we come back and we do a depreciation against that. So you take the depreciated value of the new building, a new one, depreciated value, plus the price of land, and that's what you end up with. And if you look at all those houses over there on our wall, it'll give you an idea. So,
Excuse me, how often do you go out and actually go to
the actual sites and do a visit. Okay, by law, we're supposed to see every house in the town over a 10-year period. Over 10 years. Now that means that we probably have about 500 houses we have to go and visit every year. We've started a process where it hasn't happened yet, but we got the letters out. We'll send you a letter, send you a note. This is, we're coming, and you have a choice. You can let us in, or you can say, no, I don't want you in the house. The house is a mess, but you can only say it a couple of times, and eventually we don't come back. If you decide to not let them in the property, inside to look at your house, you forego the ability to challenge whatever abatement they come up with. You will not be able to go to the ATB. You know?
Yeah, you're talking about abatement. I'm talking about how often do you go as an assessor and assess each home? And you're saying once every 10 years?
Once every 10 years you can anticipate. If there are changes, we also, if the house gets sold, we send a letter out. We also have to go and look at the house and evaluate it and make sure all the things are there that were said were there, and it was sold at what they call an arm's length. We want to see if all of a sudden, you know, the house value went up, your sale went up, but guess what? They sold a boat with it, or they sold something else with it, or the personal property, or that gold bullion they had in the basement they were hiding, you know, that kind of a thing. And so we have to go and understand that, and that becomes your eventual valuation. Was that clear?
Well, it is, and the reason I'm asking is because my father was an assessor for 17 years in this town, and I know that they used to go out on Saturdays and visit different houses to reevaluate them or to evaluate them. That's why I'm asking you, because I'm sure at that time, it wasn't every 10 years that they did.
I can't tell you that.
No, I'm asking you what you do now. I'm not asking.
Yeah, that is the law, and that's what we're doing, and we're putting metrics in place to measure a lot of stuff inside these operations, and that is one of them, to see how well we're doing. Excuse me, yeah.
I
saw a white car with assessors on
Yeah.
the side. And I saw it on Flat Hill Road, and I saw it on Burridge Street. So are they the ones that have been looking at our
They're
property?
part of our 5-year reval. We have to do a reval.
When they come by your property, do they look at other neighbors'
We do,
property? For instance, if a neighbor has a lot of junk in their yard and you're next to that property, will that bring my property down in value? Do they go by that?
they, honestly, the appearance is not currently
Means a lot to a lot of people.
Oh, there are a lot, yeah. Now, if you're living next to somebody and you can come in and ask for a special classification because the neighborhood's not there, but we're trying to evaluate by neighborhood. We try to evaluate by style of home, square footage, and then there are other little factors. Does it need a roof? I don't know. Or someone's come and says, well, my septic system is failing. No, that doesn't work for us. So it's in this last reval, they didn't come into your house. This is strictly, I know it sounds terrible, a drive-by shooting.
I know.
They're just trying to confirm that
I just wondered if, they look at the property near you, next to you.
Yes, oh, we absolutely do.
And that brings your property value down if you have a lot of the neighbors.
Right.
You
So,
have all of a sudden new neighbors and they've, have a lot of stuff brought into their yard.
yeah. So what happens is we look at the neighborhood, like in the case of a lake, there was a house that should have never sold for more than $300,000, $400,000, but they had a really nice piece of property. The people came out and spent $1 million for this house. It blows the scales out totally. And it does have somewhat of an effect, but there's a curve, and you look at the outliers, and you try to find that main body of homes. And and in this case, there was a reason for that, it's no longer considered an arm's length transaction. Yeah, there was a reason for it. And the house doesn't worth anything. They just overbought, so that doesn't sit inside the normal curve. Lou?
I have an historical anecdote that might help answer your question. From when I was on the Board of Assessors. If the assessors won't come out and just sort of passively notice that the neighbors have a pile of junk or something on their property, and that would theoretically lower the value of your property. However, we did for years have somebody keep applying, I'm not going to name any names or even a street. We had somebody who kept applying, trying to get an abatement because the house next door had a stove to create, the ones that you have outside to heat water that goes into the house. And they were apparently downstream from this smoke, so they were applying for abatement on the basis of a nuisance, that it was a nuisance, that it was interfering with the quiet enjoyment of their property. That could be a basis for granting an abatement, but the assessors aren't going to come by when they do evaluation and say, hey, look, that pile of garbage over there, let's lower this house over here by 75 grand because the neighbor has a pile of garbage. So I hope that helps. You would have to actively apply for an abatement and see if it would be a basis for getting one. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And we do that.
We just, we had some folks come in and say, hey, you got me in a small house. It's a non-heated cottage. Yeah, okay. In fact, we just came up with a new set of specifications on what is a cottage and what is the valuation per square foot. So bring it in. Don't be afraid to come in, and we'll give you, we'll try and listen as best we can. We're way overwhelmed right now, but that's where we are. Any more questions?
I did have a question. With the how to read your property card, you showed it in hard copy. Does it live on the website?
It's actually living on the website. You can go ahead and print it. I just tried to give you an idea of what it would look like, and little things like house diagrams. This is when you pull it up, you go to the GIS site and you scan down and say that's what your property card will look like. And there's two kinds. There's a CAI, which is the mapping, and then there's the vision. The vision has most of the data, and that's why, oh, by the way, Sarah Kamer did this nice piece of work. Thank you, Sarah, another, another member of the team. And we realized, we're gonna tell everybody to go to the property card, but how do you interpret it? What does that all mean? What do all these codes mean? It's all in here, and you can understand it a lot better. Pull that card down, and you'll be in good shape. Hopefully this website is up and running middle of April. It's more work than you ever thought. Every time you move something in or break something else out, and then there's something changes, and it's a full-time job. Okay. Any others? Well, again, thank you very much, and we'll try and keep you informed as things keep breaking. So, oh, by the way, there's a survey. If you could, in the Jane, can you grab some surveys and just point them out? Because we want to hear what else you want to know about, and that's the only way we really can, is to pull a survey. So, and if you would like, we'd just like to, if you have a Gmail account or email account or whatever, if you could, when you sign in, throw the account in, and we'll try and get you on the mailing list, at least from the senior center. Okay, good stuff. Well, thank you very much, and stay warm, and have a good spring. Thank you. Bye-bye.